As a lifelong experiencer, Abby has always had a seat at the galactic table. This knowledge of her higher self and consciousness strengthened her connection to multidimensional beings. Having experienced galactic healing centers, Abby has access to an array of healing modalities. Through her Arcturian, Lyran and Elvish connections, she channels blue light, golden light, DNA activation, and frequency healing. Her mission is to be a bridge between the dimensional beings and source code. As a Reiki Master, TV producer, and journalist, Abby utilizes multiple mediums to reach people, as both a storyteller and teacher. Healing begins when we allow ourselves to receive it. As light beings, we have the ability to heal ourselves, but often need a medium to help us connect to higher guidance. Focusing on things like Reiki, blue light, white light, and golden light can help us achieve those. Oreck Gray uses DNA containing cosmic light to channel healing energy into one's auric field, allowing the cells to realign and begin to heal themselves. Light energy also aids in activating our DNA, allowing multi-dimensional beings to help us heal from past life traumas and address the ability for future pathways. When welcoming in multi-dimensional beings, it is important to always create a sacred and protective space. While in the Akashic, we look for our soul cycles and cut karmic bonds. Let us dive into these topics today with your host, Trisha Margus, and special guest, Abby Lynn. Enjoy.
Abby, thank you so much for coming on to the show here. I'm very honored to have you. We initially met during a divine table talk on ESETI Stargate's channel, and I thought you had really good energy, so I thought, why not come onto 90 Degree Turns? So welcome, and I would love to just kind of dive right into what kind of began all your experience, your kind of journey. Like, how did you first start connecting with other beings, and what started you on this spiritual path?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yes, I love that round top. And I was able to meet you and Alara. And I'd already met Kate. Kate and I actually were roommates at a conference. So I
Oh,
got
cool.
to know her well. So for my particular journey, I actually have been an experiencer since I was a toddler. So, from the earliest memories about 4 and 5, I would talk to my parents, my mom, about things that were happening. When I did my first meditation, though, to really like look at some hidden memories, I actually saw myself at the age of 3 was the first one where I went to. So I know it's been going on since at least the age of 3. But coming to the understanding that that was actually a soul contract that I had put in. It was something that I had chosen. At the age of 3, the memory was I was actually on a medical table and they were putting in injections, and they said it was to help my DNA. They said the environment here was very harsh and it was my body was breaking down faster than they expected. And so the injections were necessary to keep my body healthy. So that was, and it was interesting because I actually went into a Merkaba before I went and visited that. So I asked to see it without any emotion. So I was able to see it from a couple different perspectives. So, I had that aspect of my life, and And with that, up until I got to the point where now I'm physically seeing them and interacting with them, and they're talking to me and they're walking in my kitchen, was really, a lot of years of just always feeling being watched, like just always knowing that they were there. I had a couple, moments where I had time loss. But always looking up. I've always just looked up, and even in my room, I used to stand there and look out the window, and I just home, like it was just home. It was just the recurring knowingness that that is home. Um, and also just being an observer. I felt my whole life I'm an observer. I can just sit back and that always was interesting to me because I almost felt like I was a psychologist my whole life as a kid, going and felt almost separate from my peers. So, and then along with that, I also had, I grew up in a house that had spiritual activity, spirit activity. And then I went to college and I had activity in my first apartment activity. And I actually remember I went and had a session with a medium, and I was telling her all of this, and she looked at me, she goes, yeah, like, this isn't just happening to you as an accident. They're drawn towards people who can feel them and see them. And, because I could hear them, I could hear them speaking. But my visual growing up, it was just shadows. Like they were just shadow. Like I could see them peering around door jambs, and I could hear them walking around, and then I could just hear them talking. And sometimes they loved to mess with me and take my stuff. And, I would literally, like, I remember as a teenager, I was looking for this choker, because that was what was in style in the 90s, and it was gone. It was my favorite one. And so I just yelled out, like, in my room. I'm like, I know you took it. Give it back to me. Like, I want to wear it. Just give it back to me. And I left my room, and I came back in like 4 minutes later, and it was just sitting right there, smack in the middle of my bedroom. Yeah. So I've done 2 past life regressions, and then I did a QHHT session. And then I started doing some remote viewing, which all of us, we naturally are, all of us are natural intuitives and remote viewers. But really it's that muscle in the brain. And the more you use it, and knowing that you can tap into that. So I was able to just consciously just go there, because you get down into that lower theta, and then you just travel, and you just are. So, like anything, and also like just with the work that I do, using my clairvoyance, strongly, my clairsentience, all of that, it just grows. And it just, the more you use it, like any muscle, the stronger it gets. So I was able just to naturally, consciously, I just went there. So I was in a meditation group for a little bit, and, afterwards we kind of just describe it. And some people in the class, well, this one woman, she goes, don't ever do like DMT or anything. They're like, because you already just naturally, like, I just use those abilities already naturally, like, you'll never come back here. You're just gonna go. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, it was actually, and Laura mentioned this in your last show. It really was my children that brought me to the place where I'm at now. They were born very awake, very strong, gifted abilities. And, and I think because I got like the slow dip ins always from a childhood and growing up, I did a lot of research because I didn't really have anyone to talk to about those. I think all my friends knew, I was just like, oh, Abby has the haunted house. But, I did a lot of my own research, and I praise my mother because she always had all those books, accessible, because she.
Okay.
You there?
Hi, Abby.
Hi.
Okay. I don't know what happened. Everything was going fine, and then it just cut out. Did you click a button or anything on your end?
No, I did nothing.
Kicked her out.
Okay, because that was weird, because you clicked recording and then it just cut out completely. Weird. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that.
No, don't say sorry. I mean, obviously I know that you guys can like splice this and make it flow, but you might,
Yeah.
this is something to talk about. This happens.
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
This happens when we get together and we're talking about subjects like this. Just the technology, it just starts acting up. So
Yeah, it's definitely It's odd. And so I know it sometimes happens, but okay, well, we'll just take it and keep on flowing then. So okay, I have a lot of things to ask you then, because I've done some like remote viewing. I did a course with John Vivanco a few years
I
back.
did too. I did
Yeah.
mine with John. It was incredible.
Oh, that's all, isn't it? It's amazing. And like it really
great.
is, like you said, using like a muscle in the back of your, it's there. It's just really like relaxing into it and trusting whatever comes through. You just let it literally flow into you like a waterfall, and then you like analyze it later. It's such an interesting skill. Like I want to go back into it and do more of it, because it's really, if everyone knew how to get into this like really calm, like receiving mode state, like I think it'd be quite interesting. But then my question to you is, with all these beings that were around you growing up, like did you know what they looked like? Did they use a lot of masking and like veiling to not reveal themselves and who they truly look like, to not scare you? Like what was your experience? Did you ever feel like you were partially maybe even traumatized when you first started doing this kind of stuff, like what was your experience like?
So the first memories that I had, where like I woke up the next morning and I remembered like what I did that night, and this is when like 4 or 5, there was masking, there was a cloak, but what was really interesting was, even through that cloak, the face looked like one thing, and it never made sense to me because the rest of the body looked like something else. So the face that I saw was E.T., like from the movie that I loved. It was E.T.'s face. And I never understood why E.T. had long legs like a human and like white trousers. And I saw like very clearly like white shoes, like a black rubber sole, like, they walked around, but then everything was human and then an ET face. Like it didn't make any sense. And when I was really little, I explained it as, I called him my boyfriend. I said, my boyfriend came again. And I literally called it a date. Like he came and took me out on a date. And I remember going up and seeing all the treetops. That was my favorite part. Like I loved going up and seeing, like, and looking down these trees, because we had these huge evergreens. I lived near the Appalachian Mountains. And so we had these beautiful evergreens. And, obviously from a child, they looked even larger. And that was my favorite part, to see that going up all the way to the tippy tops as I went. But, and I remembered, and because I would share it with my parents, especially my mom. And I said, well, he taught me about all the stars and the planets. And my memory was being in this like observatory room. And we literally, and he was always down like on one knee. So he would be at my eye level, and he would just explain to me the stars and different planets. And we would just travel, and it was always teaching. Every single thing that I went was teaching, so I wouldn't forget. And it was always the backdrop of, you have to remember who you are. You have to remember who you are. And when now at this age, when I go back, I realize that these were the soul contracts I put in place so that I would come back to who I was. So I would remember who I was. I told them that they had to do this for me, and they all agreed to be my teachers and mentors, to bring those memories back and to help me, because they understood. I understood from that perspective before I came down here, the amnesia that happens here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, a large part, I've been kind of really feeling the past couple of days, especially really strongly today, that we are the disclosure. Like we're the true disclosure.
Yes.
Once we understand the multidimensional beings that we are on a soul level, once we truly embrace that, because I've witnessed it in my own life in the past year, the more that I'm opening up, and we open up to these heightened abilities, the more we start to see, because we can feel it out. That's a parallel version of myself. Oh, that's a family member. Oh, that's a friend. Oh, there's another parallel version of myself. It's not all these things outside of you. It's coming through you. And like once we realize that disclosure, and then they can feel our energy raising up, then they start coming more into our lives and interacting with us more strongly. Like we start going more in tune with nature around us. And that's the disclosure. Like once we realize, and it's almost like like breaking out of this mucky shell that we put ourselves in 3D. So.
Yeah. I definitely resonate with what you're saying, because I feel like the more that we're able to, especially like 2020 was a year where people could have that first opportunity, to really break out of like the matrix for a moment and really have time to go inward, right? Because all the answers are within, like you're saying.
Yep.
And so once we do that, then we're able to like hone in on these natural abilities you know, whether you're conscious of it or not. Like maybe some people have more vivid dreams, other people have their more intuition is heightened, you know, but knowing those kind of abilities and really knowing that inside is where it all lies, that your external circumstances aren't the ones that should be controlling the show by any means. It gives you true like power and sovereignty as being a human on this realm and this earth.
Yep. Yeah. And you know, in the more you walk in that just, I want to use knowingness and trust as the same exact word. It's the same exact thing. And it's like, imagine walking down the street and every time you step down, like an energy goes out from underneath your foot, gathering in with the nature and then pushing out your thought, your intentions. And it's literally like boomeranging back in through you. And so like the more that you're walking and it's flowing, like it just starts coming in naturally as we're flowing. It's so funny though. I was out for a walk one day and like, there's just a lot of stresses going on. And so I just focused and honed in on like the birds and the trees and the water. And I'm like, they don't know what's going on. And look how blissed out they are. They're just flowing with life, like just worrying about what's in front of them. Cause that's really all that we really can control is our own environment and what's going on. And I was just, going into this super bliss place. Then all of a sudden this huge like deer fly comes and just bites. He bit me so bad. And I just had to laugh because I did say a curse word in my head when it happened. But then after that, I laughed because I know that it was like that spirit saying too, like, okay, you can bliss out, but you also need to be grounded. Like, come on, you need to be from here too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's definitely finding that balancing in between all the different worlds that we're a part of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I mean, you look at what I feel like causes difficulty in society at the moment is because many people are kind of thrusted towards opposing sides of different spectrums of anything, right?
Yeah.
The whole divide and conquer agenda is meant to throw people into polarizing states so they can't really find that balance.
Yep. Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
so I'm sure what you've seen within the work you do with your clients that perhaps that when they find that alignment, right, or they get an answer to something that they didn't know before and they were really seeking it out, that it brings them more to like their heart-centered space, and then everything, their mind, their heart, everything is more aligned in the actions. You know, what's been your experience with the kind of client work you do?
Well, so as I started to go, like, honestly, like it started as me taking some courses, and then this opens up, and then this opens up, and like, oh, I can do this. You just start to feel this responsibility of, well, the mere fact that I'm able to tap into this and it can be helpful. And I always do it in service. If I can be in service of someone, if I can even just give them one thing, then I have to do it. It's feeling that responsibility. I have to do it. But so the way that I look at my sessions is I am just a door. I literally, and so my one friend, she's a medium and she's beautiful. She practices, evidential, like more like British mediumship, and is like, no, I need evidence. I need grounded evidence, like, and, but when I connect, I just let whatever comes through is going to come through. Now, I say that with the words of, I always strongly guard my environment. Like I am strongly protected. And I always put those intentions in. I'm always working in my space. So that's the reason why I can be so open, and I always say, whomever comes through with the highest information for good and through love and service to this client, you may come through and offer messages today. But every single session, I always just open it up completely and say, what do they need to hear today? Because what somebody needs to hear on, this is Monday, it's, 8:45 my time. What they need to hear at that time is what spirit is going to bring forth. That's what your soul is going to bring forth, because I've done this enough to know that they will never put you in a place of fear. They will never overwhelm you or bombard you with things that you aren't ready to handle. And with a lot of people, they take it slow. And I absolutely have. I have been in energy sessions, physically working on a body, and their higher self has come through and said, "You're done. That's enough. Like they can't handle anymore. We've done enough work today. Step back." And I always honor that. So, and it's just like this gentle onion of healing that comes through. So, I might have a session with one person, and I'm hearing from a grandmother and one guide, and then that's it. And then I can have a session with somebody else, and I have a mantid being at the end of the table. I have a dragon over here talking to them, and then I have their higher self in the middle. So like, or I have one other person and it's just a wall of their guides coming through, and I'm just getting bombarded from all. So whatever, like they're ready to hear and whatever that's what's going to come through. So it's, I ask for, intentions and questions, because that starts setting the stage for the energy. And, if I am hearing a question, that kind of gives me permission to kind of push, even though like they come through, I'll push a bit more if I'm hearing those questions, like, no, they really want to hear this. And sometimes they'll be like, no, they've heard like what we brought through is what they're ready to hear today. But yeah, so that's kind of, how my sessions flow. I just open it up and I always say, come on through, like what do they need to hear today for their highest healing, their highest growth, to help them through this next phase.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. I don't put any control. I don't force it. I don't control it. I don't say, well, I want this person to come through and I just don't, it doesn't set right in my soul. That's not how I work.
Yeah. I would say naturally any healer that is good at what they do, they're just the vessel that brings through, and the person is the one that really guides it. The one who's wanting it is who really guides the session, right? I mean, I'm sure in other modalities, maybe it changes I don't know everything, but maybe it changes depending on what modality is being used. But from my general understanding of people who are healers and do energetic work, you're just the vessel that is able to translate the information that's coming through for the person.
Yeah.
Right. And ultimately we're all self-healers. It's just finding different people, because we're all like tools, right? The skill set that you have, you've worked on for a long time, right? Like it's either innate within you or you have to hone in on it, right?
Yeah.
So it's there, but every individual can potentially reach the same level. It's just a matter of dedicating the time. Would that be right to assume such a thing?
Well, it kind of works both ways. I mean, yes, a lot of these are our birthrights to have certain abilities. It's a little bit different in 3D. Now, I think that once we're in 5D, every single person, it's just how it's going to be. In 3D, sometimes it can be a little bit different. I heard, I believe it was James Von Prague that said this in an interview, because it was one of those mainstream person interviewing, trying to be, the skeptic. And they said, well, you say that every single person can do this, but not everyone can be like James Van Prague, in seeing this. And he said, well, it's the same thing as every single person can play the piano, but not everyone's Beethoven is going to be a Beethoven. Mm-hmm. But every single person can work on their skill and work on the piano. But some people are just, and I don't want to say they're born to be, because their soul chose it. Like they're chose like, no, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to open up all these abilities. Yeah, they're just, yep. So yes, all of us do naturally have this ability, but it just depends on how strong it's going to come in. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like I know, I received a lot of these abilities. I've received certain of them from my dad's family line, and I've received certain other ones from my mom's family line.
So I guess my next question would be then, with the family lines, ancestrally, have you been able to see if certain beings have been within certain lineages that you are connected to at the moment? Or does it change constantly because of all the timelines that we're jumping through and everything?
So, okay, so I'm going to talk about the bloodlines. This may or may not answer your question, but this information came to me through my Tijetan twin. And it's so funny because I know some people say Taygeta. He's always said Tijetan. So if I'm mispronouncing it, I'm sorry, but that's what he's always called himself. So he, which is Palladian, he just looks Palladian, and he's actually the one who had the ET face. Obviously that is completely, that smoke screen gone, and I see him clearly. Honestly, when we were doing James's ESETI round table, he was like over here to the right, just giving me the biggest snot grin ever. I don't want to say a curse word, just but he was saying the information he gave me a few months ago was that they started early on testing out different bloodlines as to who would be like, what would be good bloodlines for multidimensionals to come into these vessels, because, they're coming in with a much higher frequency code. And, and I do know for, some of the humans here that are bringing in and channeling some of these energies, you have, like, your physical body has to be able to withstand it, because it can, be intense. I was doing this one session, and I had an Arcturian. I allowed them to blend in, and it was a healing session, and I was using blue, like we were using blue light the entire time, which is like I could literally see like the DNA like coming out of my hands. And I was trying that. It was intense. It was really hard. And, when energies are hitting you, the best thing to do is ground them. Like, you ground them into where there's like this beautiful flow coming through you. And every time I would ground them, they literally shot right back up into my body. And so after 14 minutes, my higher self came in and said, stop, like, you're done. And, I can usually do 45 minutes pretty easily for an energy session. So after 14 minutes, I was fried. And, once I ended that, I went and like slept for 2 hours. I was just done for the whole day. So the next morning I tapped in to figure out, and I asked them, like, what was that? Like, why couldn't I ground that? And they came through and they said, what energy was you were bringing through your vessel? They said, Gaia isn't at that frequency yet. So they said you were literally trying to plug a 220 into a 110. So it was just shooting right back up. And again, and it exhausted me. Like, I was tired for an entire day. So what my Tajetan was saying was, they tested out in the beginning, and this kind of goes along with the Dolores Cannon, how like the 3 waves, the first wavers, there was a lot of suicides, in those, because it was just too much. It was just too hard. It was being
difficult to ground it in. And there wasn't as many people. So it's,
Yep. And so that's what he was saying. They did a lot of testing, trying to find the right bloodlines that for the beings to come and incarnate in, where they could actually fulfill their mission, their purpose. And, and I also still, like, with them coming and getting me, it's that, those little DNA injections that were, helping. So, because I think my body was breaking down, number one, because our environment is harsh, but also the energy that was coming through. So, I possibly think that's probably what a lot of the visitations are about for some people. It's, it might be, feel fear-based, but some of it could be, family trying to help us. A lot of us put in pretty strong soul contracts before we came down here, because they got smarter. The more we tested out, the more we know, like, they figured out how to write the right soul contracts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Complete the missions that we have here. So, what can we go into? I know before we started this interview here, we talked a little about nanotechnology in the body. And I would love to get into that topic. I feel like many people, they've definitely heard about, the audience here has definitely heard about nanotech. But what is your experience with nanotechnology? I mean, is it something that should be feared? Should we just be aware that it's there and have a neutral stance towards it? Is there anything we could do to protect ourselves from it? Because, I mean, if we look at this life, I mean, there's so many different avenues that nanotech is being thrown at us one way or another. I mean, unless we live in a cave in the middle of nowhere, maybe then we'll be more distant from that kind of technology. But we're constantly surrounded by regular tech on top of nanotech. It's a lot to deal with. So what's been your experience with nanotech itself?
I've only had 2 experiences, and I only kind of like to speak on what I have seen and heard personally. I'm actually hearing, one of the purposes, almost like a side effect of nanotech, is to put our body in such a state of chronic inflammation that it helps to slow us down. Like, it just fogs us. It slows our bodies down, because our body is working hard, because it's a foreign substance. But, the nanotech that I've experienced personally was they spent an entire evening, my healing team, the multidimensionals, higher dimensionals, they were literally, it was like I was laying in my bed, and it was just like when you take like a bread loaf out of an oven, and they were yanking, like I was being yanked out. And then, like, when they yanked me out, I was like yanked out and standing next to them, like looking at my body, and they were literally scanning it for nanotech. And where I like dipped in for my memory that I'm still having is they're like, oh, nope, there's a little bit more here. And they literally like zoomed up the cells, separated them out, and literally like pulled it out. And then they put the body back together, put it down, took me, slammed me back in like a bread loaf, going in and out and in and out. And then like when they were down, then they were like scanning again, like, oh, there's some more, yanked me out, pulled the cells up. Sorry, I just did it. I'm a hand talker. And, you know, pull the cells apart, and then they just slowly yank them out. Then like, so I did this all night long, and it was all to remove nanotech. That's in my body. You know, mostly, you know, it comes from chemtrails. Some of it's in our food. Just this environment has been purposely made so harsh for us. So that's what I experienced personally. So, you know, I never feel like, oh, I'm special. That's not the case. So the way, whenever I experience anything, I'm like, oh, wow, that must have been a night where probably hundreds of thousands of people, this is happening to them too. Like, you know, it's like mission based. All right, we're going down and clearing out nanotech tonight. And then I was actually doing a session recently, and it was all about nanotech. And, you know, again, there's a lot of inflammation in the body, and this needs to be removed. And so when I was working, how I was being guided was, you know, a couple light beings came in, and just this working with the white light. I consider this to be straight from source, like source light. But you know, they were guiding me coming in through the crown. They're like, we need to charge it up. Like, it's like when you charge it up, it kind of brings it up closer to the surface. It's like, you know, like little magnets kind of pulling it up. And so we were running a charge from the crown to the feet, just like zipping back and forth, like just trying to ignite it in a way and bring it up. And then as we would do that, and this light would be running its course, then I went down to the feet, and they said, all right, you got to make yourself up like a pillar, almost like a solid magnet. And so I put this shield in front of me so it wouldn't absorb into my body, because obviously I don't want that. And it was just like this solid white light, and literally just a pillar. And I just went as straight as I could. And I just went like this with my hands, just yanked it out. And then obviously then you grounded it. And we just did that for like 35 minutes, just doing the rounds. So it was the first time that, again, you know, like I just get in a session and I just open it. Like, what do they need right now? And that's what came through. So, I mean, it's in all of us. I think the best way we can do it is the detoxing as much as we can. I believe, if I'm not incorrect, there's a bath that came out, and I can't remember who published it. Oh, my friend Cheryl would know this. She's amazing. She's a nurse, and she follows all of this. But it's the detox bath with alfalfa, putting alfalfa in your bath water and Epsom salt, and soaking in that for, I believe it's 40 minutes. I think it's, you put 2 cups of Epsom salt and a cup of alfalfa into your bath, and you just soak it.
Combination together will detox.
Yeah.
From nanotech. I think that's very interesting, because I know Epsom salt overall, it is a really great detox for the body, and it does many things, and as well as like you want to have things like chlorella and spirulina. It helps like cross the blood. It takes the metals that are in the brain that are able to then leave the body and exit in a safe manner. There's a lot of like natural remedies for sure to be able to do it, but I find it interesting from from your energetic perspective, because a lot of people are getting these jabs now, you know, and so I mean, you see stories of like spoons sticking to people, and like whether or not those are true, I mean, they're out there, right? And so to be able to get rid of all these heavy metals and other things that are within our body and causing harm and not supposed to be there naturally, you know, it's interesting to see from your perspective. So I'd love to get into, so your site is called the Oreck Gray, right?
It's Oreck Gray. So I had one client, and they were so sweet. They said, Abby, the last time you said that, it sounded like I said Oreck Gray. so yeah, it's, you know, I Oreck as in your auric field, and then a ray meaning like energy coming in.
Yeah, I wanted to get into like the name of it, because I think it's an interesting name. And then you say when you do these healing sessions, use different colors of light, right? Mm-hmm. We know that frequency is in everything, holds a frequency, right? You can even like give yourself minerals and vitamins via frequency tones, right? So what in your opinion is the different light tones? Do certain certain colors go for certain, like, let's say chakras or hormones in the body that are associated, or is it depending on star family? What does it mean? What does it all mean?
You know, it comes through different in different ways. So definitely the blue light comes through when I'm working on, again, you know, it's usually accompanied, I have my Arcturians there with me. But the blue light comes in when I'm working with either like a muscle tear or like joint pains or something within the nervous system where it's more like a targeted area. And it's literally like sending in fresh DNA codes, like new DNA, but it's also going in and repairing the damaged DNA that's there. So I see blue radiating from my hands, but I literally see DNA strands coming out. But it's usually when I'm using the blue light, it's on a very specific area that's honed in. When I've channeled in the white light, that is normally where it's almost like a plasma that to me comes straight from source. Like that is just pure coded energy, just pure consciousness. It is just pure consciousness when that comes in. And that goes through the entire body, so that's where usually it's, when I'm holding their hand, sometimes, I'll put it in and, I can put it in through like the cardiovascular system if that's what's needed to be cleaned out. They've channeled it through sometimes at the crown when we're trying to just go around the entire outside, but mainly it's when it's through the hands going in, usually through the cardiovascular, and it just goes like it's almost like this plasmic light that goes everywhere, and it goes where it needs to go. I don't put that much thought behind it. I just trust and I just flow it. And it's usually accompanied by some higher realms. I usually have some light beings standing there helping me with it. That's sometimes when I have, more like the angelic, the archangels coming in and speaking with that. Sometimes it's just straight the source voice coming through. But, it has to come through with the person has to be able to hold that frequency when it comes through. I just noticed the difference that it comes through when the physical vessel is already naturally at a vibration where they can handle it and they can accept it. The golden light, that usually comes through, it's usually accompanied with light language for me. And this is, again, these are all just my personal experiences, and I can only speak on what I personally felt and seen. The golden light comes through, and that usually is when I'm like more above the whole body, and it's just kind of like sprinkling in, and it usually is sprinkled down along with light language. So, and that is just another form. It's almost like a soul healing. It goes a little bit deeper into more like, I don't know why I'm saying rooted, like a rooted energy that needs healing. So sometimes if I'm like dealing with an Akashic, I'm looking at an Akashic lifetime, we're bringing the light language to bring in the healing as we're like viewing it above. And I literally just like sprinkle it, and it just goes down like this golden raindrops into their body. So that's the differences that I see.
That's really interesting. And I guess I've got a question about light language then, because I've definitely like seen different people speak light language, and it does seem to have a particular, I don't know if you call it like a accent to it, but it sounds similar depending on the people I've heard speak it, right? When you are going and channeling light language, do you have an idea of what you're channeling through, or does it come with visions, or is it like an intuitive hit of this is what this person is needing? Like, does it come with any sort of, I don't know, like a manual of some sort, so you know what's coming through you? My own curiosity is.
Yeah, no. And it's really interesting because as I'm speaking, I'm seeing the symbols coming through, and oftentimes it's I don't know, like I put my hands almost like this, like it's like I need this strong like funnel, like this is as wide as but it's like force, and the codes are like coming in and shooting down. So it's like I'm creating this vortex of going straight into where it needs to be. So I'm usually, if you're on my table and I'm speaking light language, this is what I'm doing above you, because they usually have something on their eyes. No, it's definitely purposeful. Sometimes I've seen it in it's almost like they're anchoring in like pillars in order to then healing can happen. So I'll give you this one, for instance. I was working on someone, and the minute I got him, like, oh, Lemurian, like, oh, wow, okay, we got to clear out this Lemurian past, like very Lemurian. And Lemurian is very hard to speak, because when I'm hearing, like I hear it and then I speak it. And, at first I'm trying my very best to reproduce what I'm hearing, but the muscles of your throat, it's, I got to kind of practice a little bit more. And, And I always tell them like, please send me grace. Like, I'm just trying. But it's so funny because they were literally giving me like a visual. It's like, if I can visualize it, then I can do it. So they're showing me a visual of the vocal cords inside of my mouth of how I need to like move them, which muscles to move, and then I can produce the sound. So like with one particular client, they needed to hear Lemurian because so often they come through and they're like, don't worry the message. They just need to hear it. It's like they need to hear this home language because by hearing it, then it brings them back. It turns on something within that's coded within them. So I was speaking Lemurian to bring forth this energy. And literally, like, as I started to speak it, then I saw their mother from that lifetime was like walking around the end of the table. And she's like talking. And as she's talking, I'm seeing the soul fragment of why she's attached to it. And it's like, almost as like she was chained down underwater. Like she did something. And so because she was literally like drowned, she still had this chain around her ankle. Like it was almost just leaving her grounded in that lifetime. And she needed to remove that. So, as I went down to the foot and where that was, like her mother was speaking this language, and replaying what needed. And I was just repeating what I was hearing. But then the light language came in because then I needed the light language to heal it. So I was jumping from Lemurian to light, doing this in the specific order, which was being guided in order to like break up the chain that was around there. So I was using light language to heal the pain that was surrounded around this chain while speaking Lemurian because the body, my client laying there needed to hear that to bring those emotions up to surface. So it's, when you're laying there, it's like, you got to bring it up and then you clear it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I don't think I've ever heard anyone explain that kind of level. That's really interesting. So then light language in this case was used to help clear on top of Lemurian. But then was that like a what would you say typically is light language usually used for like healing purposes, would you say? Does it come from any like particular star family, or is it kind of like the universal language that everyone
universal uses? It's universal language. It's just I was actually talking to someone, I think it was Tyler. I was actually talking to Tyler Koala. I go, like, all these starseeds coming in. I mean, I'm just seeing it with all these babies, like these children, that's their like natural first language, like to the point where, their first language is just going to be light language. And then they learn the language of wherever they're choosing to be born. But that's just like, I go, it's like needs to be put on resumes.
Who knows? Maybe in a little bit, it'll be worldly accepted.
Yes. Yep. But no, I definitely do feel that it's universal. It's universal language. So what I do, I have, different languages that come through, and sometimes I get visuals while I'm speaking, and through the visual, I can share why it's coming through. And sometimes I'm hearing it and they literally just say, you just have to say it because they just need to hear it. Like their soul just needs to hear this language. And sometimes it's like, this is their home language that they're going to resonate with. And so I just start talking.
Wow. So. That's wonderful. That's really cool. So is there anything else you'd like to talk to our audience about? I know you have some events coming up. We'll be seeing each other at ECETI because you're going to be a speaker there. And as well so
yes, I'm very excited to get out to ECETI, just to feel the energy. I do Skywatches, not very often, but I do Skywatches here in my backyard with small groups of friends, and I love it. Usually I kind of I just wait till the sky pulls me out, and you do, like, you can feel the energy outside. It just jazzes up. So just between my kids' connection and my connection, life is a little bit interesting. We never really know what's gonna be happening and popping through. So no, love to do Skywatches. I can't wait to get out on the ranch and experience those there. I have some equipment that I was gifted to me, so I'm excited to bring that out there. But yeah, no, excited to speak at ECETI. I'm gonna wait the first week of July beforehand and just connect with all of, my family and see what they are wanting to share and say for that presentation. I'm working with Steven Cephalo to do a piece of artwork. He's going to bring to the visual of one of my memories from childhood. So I'm excited to share that in the presentation. And then I have another conference in October at Sedona. So I can't wait to get out there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. Sedona has some wonderful energy out there, as well as you can just see ships. Just it's wild. I don't know how it is in South Carolina if you just walk outside and you just notice them, but it's so cool to go to places that have a lot of kind of energies, and to be with like-minded people. I think it's always very exciting and just kind of a breath of fresh air, you know, to reconnect with everyone. It's a lovely time.
I love it. I love going to conferences. I really genuinely do. You just, your batteries get recharged when you spend that amount of time around so many other just high vibe people. It's so refreshing. And I love, our audience of people, like our community, because they're just the most accepting, loving, down to earth, just open-minded people. The very first time I went to a conference, I went with my mom, and we went to Contact in the Desert, and this is in 2018. And we were overwhelmed by the kindness of everybody who was in attendance. It was a place where you could leave your purse down, and there were, 2,000 people there. I had zero concern. No one was going to touch that. And if they did, it was somebody lost this. Oh, we need, can we all gather and help? Somebody lost this. That is just what it is like being at these conferences and being around such beautiful people. So I love going.
Yeah. I'm very excited. I know that nature out there is just beautiful. You can see Mount Adams and just the skyscape. So we have to see if it's going to be a new moon or a full moon, because you can see the Milky Way from up there. It's so beautiful. And yeah, the people really are what make it. And I think what's really great is when you go to a conference like that, and then you decide to, like, everyone has to go back home, right, to where they're located on the earth. So they go back to their spots, and they're able to take that energy with them and then share it with their local communities, whether it's just their friend group or just people they meet, just that vibe on the same level. It's going to be definitely a wonderful time, and I'm excited to be there.
Yeah.
So Abby, where can we find you then? I know your website's Oreck Gray. Do you have any other, like, social medias we can follow you on, or?
Not right now, just my website. I'm on Facebook under Abby Lynn, so you can see me there. I'm getting ready to launch a podcast with my friend Heidi, just all about helping these starseed kids, helping parents, helping them find each other, and starting some classes. So yeah, but that's it right now. I'm also excited for ECETI. I'm excited for some Sasquatch action.
Yeah. There's been plenty of experiences out there.
Yeah.
With Sasquatch. I do have one more question for you then, with children who are being born into, like, this timeline now. What do you think that, I mean, is it that every generation is a step up above the one before, so we're just here to continuously raise the consciousness of the planet, or do they have, like, a different mission now because so many people are waking up, like, at a rate that I've never seen before in the past year, and even 5 years? It's just been progressively speeding up every year. So what do you think these kids' mission is now? I mean, there's just, the world is going to be completely different,
It's going to be completely and utterly different. I really feel strongly that it's our role, our generation, this form of waivers. Our job is to be doing exactly what you're doing, opening the dialogue, creating these platforms. Heidi and I working on starting some, retreats, starting these schools. I believe there's some people in the community they're really being called to start creating these schools, start creating a curriculum for these children. And, I always kind of, joke with somebody because, often people approach me and they say, well, my kids have this ability and my kids have this ability. I always going to say, well, then so do you. It's not an accident that these gifted children are being born in this family. Like, if they are that gifted, there's something in your bloodline. You just haven't accessed it yet. Like, but you are gifted as well, equally gifted as well. These kids are smart. They chose their parents wisely. But, no, I definitely feel this energetic, like, we're building this platform and then they're just going to take it. They're just, I just can't, I literally cannot wait to see what these kids do. I was doing a reading on this one child, and it was so beautiful because I felt heavy Native American with them, but they're so galactic. And so I kind of dipped into that further because I was trying to explain, like, why I was getting, like, heavy Native, heavy, like, earth connection, but so galactic. And so they showed me they had these lifetimes being a Native American, and what they saw in those lifetimes was what Gaia was needing. They could sense in those lifetimes what type of healing was needed, and they knew they didn't have that here currently on Gaia for that to happen. So their soul chose to incarnate in galactic lifetimes to go out further and literally gain the knowledge that they have now brought back in to this lifetime as a starseed. And it's just going to turn on. It's embedded in them, and they're going to bring some type of healing for the dirt, the ground, this earth. So that was beautiful to see.
Oof. Well,
Yeah.
I can't wait. That's going to be definitely cool to see what all these young
I've seen
kids
a lot.
grow
You know,
up.
I go forward in some of the sessions, and I've been seeing a lot of encoded, soul encoded, and it's like they're just waiting. It's like we're waiting for this wall when it's just going to be like ignited. It's just going to turn on. But a lot of it is, it just like healing. Like so many people are embedded with this healing for this environment. So it's going to be incredible. I've dipped into it a couple times. It's beautiful.
Well, that is a wonderful way, I think, to wrap up this conversation here. Abby, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
coming onto the show here. Like I said, I'm very excited to meet you in person in like a month's time here in July, upcoming
Yes.
July. So it's going to be wonderful. And again, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with us here at 90 Degree Turns.
Thank you so much, Trisha.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening now.